CBS 11 News Now.
Hey everybody, Doug Dunbar coming up on 8:30 on this Tuesday night, and want to welcome you to Facebook Live and have a little discussion tonight and share some sound and some video with you from earlier today. If you didn't get a chance to see part of or all of David Sherrard's service that took place over at Watermark Church today, even for those of us in the newsroom, honestly, it was very impactful. A wide range of emotions, as you'd well imagine, with an officer's funeral, and some poignant moments that we wanted to share with you tonight. Obviously, maybe rolling in late from work, something like that. So this gives us a good opportunity to sit down, share a few things with you, and we don't have a time limit here. We can let this breathe a little bit and have a little conversation and reflect on the day as one of our officers, of course, is about to be laid to rest. The Watermark Church was the host church for this afternoon's service, and they also called it a celebration of life, which we really loved. And then on into the evening, this is what is happening, or what happened after the sun went down. This is probably around 6:30-ish. Honestly, it was right when we were getting off the air for the 6 o'clock show. And the hearse was pulling out, obviously, with Officer Sherrard. And one of the things we pointed out that was so powerful to see is along the streets, the side roads, and the bridges. This is one of the bridges that this procession passed underneath here on Central Expressway heading northbound. Hundreds of people came out to salute and to say thank you and to wish the family well. And, you know, as this was unfolding, I'm thinking the whole time about the widow, Nicole, and those two beautiful daughters that David Sherrard leaves behind, who are going to be raised by a mom now and a widow. And their thoughts, obviously, were something that were in my mind as I watched this procession unfold tonight, because it's the final journey to his final resting place. A private burial ceremony is our understanding at the gravesite, which has been chosen in Rowlett, and we certainly would not impose on something like that. So I wanted to share with you a few moments from the service today, because we found the eulogy from the widow Nicole to be especially moving in a lot of different ways. It was very raw, it was very real, and candidly, it was a little different than what you, I guess, might normally expect. And that's in no way judging or anything like that, but it was so real that if you missed it today, I wanted to share some of it with you. So Stephen's got queued up for us. Stephen's our producer. A little piece of share kind of a piece from the beginning, in the middle, and the end. But let's start kind of in the beginning as Nicole took the podium and began to address the audience of what was hundreds. And so many of them, obviously, brothers in blue and sisters in blue from not only across North Texas, but many have flown in from other places around our country to celebrate the life of David Sherrard. So this is part of the beginning as Nicole Sherrard was describing the beginning of their relationship when they were teenagers. Take a listen.
We met in high school in April 1998, a shy 17-year-old boy and an outgoing 15-year-old girl. We went on our first date in May, and we continued to date and became really good friends over that summer. We dated on and off the remainder of my high school years. He told me several times the last few years that he fell in love with me at 17, and he would love me until the day he died. We married in November 2002, and I moved out of my parents' home to live with him. I was 19, and he was 22, and we had no clue what marriage was really about. He grew up Baptist, and I grew up Catholic. We were both believers, but we had different views of what marriage should look like. Dave knew that marriage was forever, no matter what. I, on the other hand, had an unrealistic fairy tale idea of what marriage should be. When we would fight, I would second guess if we made the right decision.
So that was part of the beginning of the eulogy from the widow, Nicole Sherrard. And, she kind of laid the foundation to then, in the middle of her eulogy, which incidentally was probably about 10 minutes or so in length, to talk about the hard times. Because as she will describe for you here, life was not perfect. Not always is, obviously. And we thought this was an interesting moment to be able to see the raw emotion and the real description and emotion of what their life was like in the middle of their lives together. So here's something from the middle section of the eulogy today from Nicole.
Dave worked evening shift and I worked deep nights. We thought this was a good idea because the one of us always was with our kids. As we looked back several years later, this was a terrible idea for our marriage. We quickly became roommates that were raising children. We hardly saw each other because of our opposite shifts, and we slept at different times. Dave also worked part-times, and we didn't make time for each other. Our kids were our number one priority, and then our jobs, which sounds great, but as we would later find out, the priorities in a marriage should always be God first, spouse second, children, then work. Our marriage was falling apart. There was hurt, bitterness, and anger, and instead of talking about it, we just kept going on with life. A few years into this, I told Dave I wanted a divorce. I was completely honest with where I was at in our marriage and my reasons why I wanted out. Dave fought for me and refused to let me leave him.
So, middle section of that eulogy today, very interesting and very real, obviously, with Nicole Sherrard putting herself out there in a way that I don't know that I've ever seen that in a eulogy before. And that's not to say that it belongs or doesn't belong. This was her day to say what she wanted to say about the man she loved and her husband and the father of their two children who are now going to unfortunately grow up without a dad. I see a lot of you commenting regarding the funeral and the service, and it was beautiful, and also talking about that it ran into the evening hours, and yes, traffic was impacted, but we saw a lot of beautiful things happen along the freeway as well, especially northbound Central Expressway, where so many people had pulled over to salute in some cases and to take a good hard look at someone who served this community so proudly. So the end part of the eulogy from Nicole today was kind of a bow tie on everything that she had shared with the audience up to this moment, and described beautifully, and I wanted to share with you as well, the end of their marriage and the horrible end that they come to just a few days ago. But after all the trouble and after all the difficulties that so many of us go through in life and in marriage, they had gotten everything together, and things were heading in the right direction, and things were good. She can tell you best.
Dave was a man with integrity, and he was a living example of what we should all strive to be. Our marriage was completely broken, and God fixed it. I did not believe after 12 years of marriage and all the hurt that we had gone through that it was possible. But if you knew us in the last 2 years, you saw that fairy tale marriage. Dave always loved me unconditionally, even during times I was unlovable. He never quit on me. He always said mushy stuff, and he would make a complete fool out of himself for me, even though he knew he was going to get teased about it from his buddies. And he treated me like a queen. Last Sunday, we had a conversation about our marriage. We had separately completed a church survey and were asked to rate our marriage. Dave asked me what I rated it at, and we just had a fun little banter. So I said, "What did you rate it at?" He replied, "I put a 9. And then I started thinking and changed it to a 10 plus because we have grown so much closer in the last year with each other and with God. And then he asked again what I put, and I replied, "Well, what do you think I put?" And he replied, "Am I gonna look stupid, and did you put a 3 again?" I smiled and replied, "I put a 10 plus." And he smiled so big and was so happy. We had finally hit the perfect marriage, and we were each other's best friend. Dave set the bar very high as a husband. He was an amazing example of what a husband should be to his wife, and I'm grateful our daughters got to witness just how much he loved me so selflessly. That's a blessing.
Nicole Sherrard, in her own words, quote, "We finally had the perfect marriage." And for them, she shared with all of us, as real as it can be, that it took quite a while to get there. And imagine what was on her mind and in her heart when she was sharing that with a lot of people she's never met in her life today. I can't imagine how difficult that moment was for her. And Angie Bell Richter, her transparency is beautiful. She did want everybody to know that God was the priority in her life, and it looks like both of them put God first for them, and that's what works for them. And it's unfortunate that it has come to such a quick and horrible ending. Joan Cummings, thank you. Yeah, the life of officers, military paramedics, nurses, they are hard. And they do have to get worked through sometimes because the amount of hours that these people put in, the pressures that they go to work with and then sometimes come home with are things that those of us who don't do that can't necessarily understand. It's difficult. And the amount of worry, I think, as well. Unconditional love, Bridget, I love that term because that's what it is, I think, when you talk about families, husbands, wives, sisters, daughters, brothers, name a relative who's in the house when that first responder goes out the door and you just don't know, right? And that's what they deal with every single day. And over a while, you maybe become numb to it a little bit, but I think in the end, there's that little slice of fear that's in the back of everybody's mind who sits in that house and goes about their day and, wonders whether mom or dad are going to be okay today. And unfortunately, on this day, for Officer David Sherrard, it was not going to be good for him that day. So I appreciate you hanging with me here. Elegant and classy lady, Amani Santiago, yes. And Amani, I saw your comment a minute ago, and I actually took a note. You talked about the end of watch audio, which is the radio call that they made, and they do for all police officer funerals. And we're going to play that actually on our 10 o'clock show tonight, about an hour and a half from now. And if you haven't heard it, it's deeply moving, it's chilling at the same time, and it pays the ultimate respect, I think, from the department to the officer and also the officer's family. The end of watch call on the radio, and it's eerie to listen because of the amount of silence, honestly. Joan, thank you for weighing in. I appreciate you. Marla, you're never numb to it. If you know, then you know far better than I do. I've not been in a family where we've had first responders, so I will take your word for it, and I completely understand that. And I would never pretend to be in somebody's shoes. We can only, ponder what we think it might be like. Bandit, I appreciate you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jan. It's good to talk to you guys tonight. Yeah, I just wanted to share that with you because we thought it was poignant moments through the day. And again, a type of eulogy that we've not seen and we've not necessarily heard before. I know I haven't heard a eulogy like that before, where it's so real and talking about the really difficult moments of their marriage and the fact that the marriage was almost over for them. And then they come full circle. And in the last couple of years, things were really great. And they got everything right. And again, I'll leave it with the words of Nicole Sherrard. She said, "We finally had the perfect marriage." And that's an awesome way to end it. So I will thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the interaction. I agree with you, Carol. The last call on duty is a difficult one to listen to, but we're going to take a moment and listen to it out of respect for the family tonight. We'll do that on our show at 10 o'clock. So thanks for hanging with me here on Facebook for just a few minutes. I hope you enjoyed and took a little solace in the moment that we shared tonight, and I appreciate you being with us. We'll see you on the show at 10. Thanks.